In this one, I want to talk about push sticks. I use this particular type right here. This is the single push stick solution, I guess you could call it. And the way it works is that it steps down on the back here so that it will hook over the board on the end and not slip off, you know. It also pulls the stock down tight to the saw, which is very important because the stock can lift and ride up the blade if it's just held on the end. And what it also does, because it has such a big surface area here, it allows you to grip the work and steer it and push it into the fence as you're running it through. Keeping the stock up tight against the fence is very important for the quality of the cut you're getting. Obviously, you don't want it to drift over. But how you do it is also very important for your own personal safety. Whenever you're pushing the stock, you never want to have your hands pushing in the direction of the blade, directly towards the blade. So when you're holding your push stick and you're pushing it ahead, that's towards the blade, but you're also pushing it slightly sideways, forcing the wood up against the fence as you push it through. So if anything happens, the momentum of your push is going to take you away from the blade, over the fence. Now, if you watched the first video in this series, you saw me actually cutting this piece of wood right here. And the way I did it is I fed it with my right hand from the back, and I used my left hand to push it up against the fence. There's the quality of the cut. I'm also holding it down flat against the table so it can't lift up while it's being cut. Because if the stock lifts up, it can snap back down, and that will, first of all, ruin your cut, and it'll also frighten you, which could result in something else bad happening. When my left hand is guiding the stock and holding it down, I'm actually pushing towards the fence and not the blade. And then when I get to the end of the cut, I take my left hand away because I don't need it anymore. My right hand is acting very much like the push stick in that situation. And I have my thumb on the end of the board pushing it ahead, and my fingers are holding it down and holding it up tight against the fence. And so that brings up the question, when exactly should you use a push stick? And once again, I don't have any hard and fast rules for that. Some guys will say anything 4 inches and under, like width, you should use a push stick, and I can't disagree with that. That's a good strategy. However, if you're in a situation where you have a lot of, say, 5-inch boards that you need to rip down to 4 inches wide, you're going to save a lot of time by not using push stick if you know that you can safely push it through using your hand. Part 2 of that question is that you should only use a push stick on narrow stock as you're feeding it through. There is one exception, though, if you're cutting something shorter. And what I mean is something like this, and you need to cut this down to, say, 3 inches wide. This push stick will get the job done. Like I said before, it hooks over the end, it'll push it through. Also, it clamps down on top of the stock, and you're able to steer it through the cut. Keep it tight up against the fence as you're feeding it through. Part 3 of that question would be, when shouldn't you use a push stick? And for me, in my opinion, should be on stock that's wider. You don't need to use a push stick. Like the distance your hand is away from the blade is already reduced the risk down to an acceptable level. And plus you gain a lot more control. And remember, control is very important over the workpiece as you're pushing it through. Your hands will have a much better grip on the stock than the push stick can. And also there's a problem of where to push on the stock. If you're pushing on the stock on one side more than the other, it can rotate away from the fence and go into the back of the blade and cause a kickback to happen. So even that demonstration shows how effective this push stick is at holding the stock. I actually had to lift the front to get it to do what I was trying to demonstrate it would do, turn sideways. Because often you'll see guys using long push sticks with a handle on the end with a notch on the front, and they'll push it through like that. The closer you are to the fence, the more likely it's going to turn into the blade, because that's the way the forces are going. And that's where some people will say that you need 2 of those push sticks. I don't have any, so I just use these 2 little pieces of maple to demonstrate. one to push on the end of the board and the other to guide it through. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that method if you get used to it and you're comfortable using it. However, from my perspective, it gives up too much control because there's a lot more distance between you and the workpiece than there is with this one. Now that sounds safer because, well, you're that much further away from the blade. But the chances of this thing slipping while you're using it are much less than these things slipping while you're using those. And then the one in your left hand is going right into the blade. And then the other thing about using these is that you have to temporarily, well, you don't have to, I'm sure there's a way to juggle it, but you're more likely to let go of the workpiece, to take your hands off the workpiece to get yourself situated with these than it is with these. When I'm guiding the work through with this one, my left hand is holding it up against the fence, so it's always there. I can stop the cut, let go with my right hand while my left hand is still holding it, reach for the push stick, and finish pushing it through. That way I'm never giving up control over the stock as it's going through the saw. Now, admittedly, I don't use this type of push stick, so maybe it looked more awkward than it would if you got more practice with it. But this is something that you can try at home. You don't even need a table saw to do it. You can make a push stick like this. You can even make it out of cardboard and try it for yourself. And you can judge for yourself which one you prefer. Okay, I'm not saying one is better than the other. In my opinion, though, this gives you more control, and control is what's important. What else is important is tactile feedback. You know, I talked about kickback in the last video, and part of detecting that is some feedback from what you're cutting. And you can actually feel what's going on better with this system right here. Your left hand is in contact with the wood. You can feel what's happening. Whereas this isolates you more from that, and you may not detect it. Okay, you're working with your ears as well. You're listening for stuff, but you're gonna find that you need more pressure when things start to bind.